Mohsen Fakhrizadeh has been murdered in a terrorist attack. Mac was there, eyewitness report. What actually happened, Mac?
Yeah, from the ground, what I witnessed was, I didn't really see.
Well, what are the reports emerging from Iran? What are we being told happened? This is a weapons expert, right?
Yeah, apparently, yeah, he's a nuclear atomic scientist, and he was an expert. He was under BB's radar for a while. Like, okay. I'm sure all of the viewers.
There was a presentation where BB 2 years ago mentioned this particular individual as someone in their sights. Would you say that the Tel Aviv government would be looking to take out in a targeted assassination? And this is what it looks like. But might there be more than one enemy of Iran who would want to take someone out like that particular scientist?
Actually, that's a good question. Come to think of it, there could be the Saudis that could possibly pass as Iranian as well.
Okay, and BB was in Saudi recently, wasn't he, for a meeting? So you've got the Saudis, I believe so, and of course there are internal factions. I've heard the MEK mentioned, the Mujahideen Khalq organization, this terrorist group that base themselves out of Camp Ashraf in Iraq. They would be against the regime in Tehran, right? And they've committed terrorist attacks before. So someone might have helped them, facilitated them to do it. They get an incredible amount of funding from people around the world, the MEK. They've got my phone number, and I went to one of their meetings. It was kind of like a rally, and good old John Bolton was there. And this was an event happening in Brussels, in Belgium. And if you signed up for it, you got a free ticket to go by coach to Brussels. You got fed and you got a hotel room for the night, as if they were trying to pack the place out with a hired crowd. So it seems that the opposition groups against the Islamic Republic of Iran get a hell of a lot of funding from different places, get a hell of a lot of training and weapons. I know the Jandallah in Baluchistan, who would want autonomy for the Baloch areas of Iran. They also might be suspects in an attack like this. But when something like this happens in Iran, do the people feel that they are under attack, or is it just a targeted killing against a government official? I know several bodyguards were also killed, but no so-called civilians. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, there were no collateral damages or other lives, which is why I would say it was a well-executed assassination. Which is what I mean by it is knowing that doing this, facilitating this kind of what he was doing, he should have known. He would have been had a target on his back, basically, being in the position.
I would imagine that this kind of operation would be impossible without having some Iranians on the ground in on it, facilitating it, given how isolated Iran is, given how difficult it is to get into the country, especially if you're from Tel Aviv. There must have been some Iranians facilitating this. I mean, these people, in the eyes of the government, are guilty of treason, aren't
they? If they are caught, that is, if there are sleepers or whatever you want to call them, like agents or whatever. But the details of the assassination, apparently there was 10 assassins there at the time to to ensure his death.
10 assassins.
Oh,
Right.
no, 12, sorry. 12. Was it 12, if I'm not mistaken?
The
I've got to
12,
look at the figures. But around
the
that
12
kind of
assassins.
a dozen,
Really?
yeah. There's 30 people, I think, in total.
And it happened on Friday. Next, you're going to tell me there was 13 of them, and one of them betrayed him with a kiss. That's a different story. It's almost sounding biblical. Bill Fence is saying they killed the hero Iranian soldier first, now top scientist. Who's next on their list? Well, it's a long list. I did try and put together a list of Iranian scientists, diplomats, and other figures that have been killed, and I only went back as far as 2010, but the list was getting too long. So this is a recurring pattern, and Mahar Baloch is saying, Azlmo Alaik. Are you from Balochistan, Mahayar? And maybe could you tell us a little bit about the Jundallah, these factions that want some kind of autonomy for the people from Balochistan? And do they have a point? Do Muslims of a Sunni persuasion have a hard time in Iran? Is that the gripe that the people from the Balochistan province have? Mac, you might be able to shed a little light on this. And if this is an assassination by Bibi, would people that want to fight for Sunni rights in Iran join and take weapons from the likes of Bibi if it facilitated their agenda? I'm not sure what you think about that.
Well, seeing that there was a first flight to the UAE as well, so it seems there seems like, I mean, with the Arab side of things, they seem to be getting along, or they're making deals with Arabs. So
yeah, there's the situation with the United Arab Emirates is a good point to bring up. And I said if this assassination attempt was planned somewhere else, but it happened in Iran, you'd have to have people in on it. The UAE had an assassination happen under their noses. Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, I think he was, in Dubai. This was the Hamas operative who was killed in his hotel room, smothered with a pillow, and several operatives came and successfully did their extrajudicial execution of their enemy. And of course, that was on fake passports. And I believe they used a Irish passport and British passport, falsified documents to get into the country. But now, if someone wants to fly from Tel Aviv straight to the UAE, you'll have no problem getting a visa on arrival, or vice versa. That's absolutely right. But here's another list of countries. How many is it? Is it 13? 12, 13? We're getting lots of numerology tonight. Afghanistan, Algeria, Iran, Iraq, Kenya, Lebanon, Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria, Tunisia, Turkey, and Yemen all now cannot travel freely to the United Arab Emirates, and many of those countries are Arab, most of them Muslim, apart from Kenya. So I'm not sure what this move, this step closer in this relationship, whereby people from Tel Aviv can arrive freely in the United Arab Emirates, even though the last visitors from that country came to commit an extrajudicial killing of a Hamas operative. So the UAE, as if it did much to help the cause of resistance before, has now completely abandoned it. And I wonder where this will leave the likes of Hamas. I mean, I don't know what Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was doing in the UAE, but Hamas have moved their headquarters to the Gulf. They moved from Damascus to Qatar during the Syrian crisis, and Syria, who had looked after the Palestinians so well, and every weapon that they had to resist with came from Syria, from the hands of the Bashar al-Assad regime. But when the uprising occurred in Syria, it was seen as a Muslim Brotherhood style uprising, and Hamas said that they were neutral, if you can be neutral in such a situation, and they headed for refuge in the Gulf and ended up in Qatar, which has a Muslim Brotherhood style government, who would be close allies with Turkey. I'm just looking down my list now. I noticed that Turkey is on this list. So the Emirates are turning a bit of a cold shoulder to Turkey, but
on
they
Turkey
haven't.
As well.
Yeah, on Turkey as well.
Isn't Turkey part of the EU?
No, they're trying to be, but it hasn't happened yet.
They're not.
33X is saying Hamas guy was killed by a very hot, gorgeous lady. So, okay, I don't think that's true. Bill Fence is alleging it was a honey trap.
It could be.
No, he was killed by people with fake Irish passports, I'm ashamed to say. I hope Ireland had no
part in it.
Part in that, yeah. So the UAE has put its cards on the table. We know where Iran stands. How will this be spun in Iran, do you think? And will it make the government more popular, less popular? Do people care? Is this a political football that gets kicked around too much?
I mean, it is going to affect the people because they're feeling vulnerable, to be easy targets out there, and in that sense, yeah, they will feel. But now, I think what I've noticed with Iran, I think the way they tend to retaliate is a calculated retaliation. It's not just it's not an immediate. For them, it's not important that it's immediate or not, as long as it's calculated. And it's I've noticed that they follow the Geneva Convention as well.
Okay, brilliant.
So
you wouldn't believe it for all the propaganda we hear about the Islamic Republic. They follow the Geneva Convention, do they?
Well, they seem to be, because when I think Soleimani was last killed, they would after that, the retaliation after that was they were targeting American and US bases and stuff.
Of course. And Qasem Soleimani was, of course, killed by the Americans, an Iranian general killed by Americans in Syria. You couldn't make it up. That's correct. Bill Fence saying, I read once that IRA and Hamas had ties to each other. The IRA would have more political affiliations and ties to the secular nationalist PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. And these left-wing factions would have all trained and exchanged ideas with each other throughout the 70s and 80s. It was with the collapse of the Soviet Union that the resistance movements drifted away from secular nationalism and Arab nationalism towards the Islamism. And of course, that was on the back of the Islamic Revolution, although it came 10 years before the collapse of the Soviet Union. This was the drift worldwide, really, from secularism and nationalism towards religionism, if I can use that term, towards fanaticism. And it was in the early 2000s that the swing of the balance of power shifted from the historically popular Fatah movement of Yasser Arafat, and with his passing and Mahmoud Abbas inheriting the mantle, he couldn't really live up to that reputation, and in a protest vote, people elected Hamas. And the minute that Hamas became the only democratically elected government in the Arab world, the rest of the world turned their back on them and said, no, they're terrorists. We want Fatah back now, even though Fatah had been at the helm for the best part of 30 or 40 years and were limited in what they could achieve. So the more desperate people get, the more they will gravitate towards extremism. So you've got the West Bank controlled by Fatah, who grabbed power in that 2005 situation after the election, and Hamas, who grabbed the Gaza Strip. And this, of course, suits Tel Aviv because you've got your enemy divided. And in between those two factions, the Fatah in the secular nationalist side and Hamas being a Muslim Brotherhood style Islamist party. In between that, you've got the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, who are very much left-wing, very much affiliated with the old Soviet Union. And their factions suffer in both Gaza and in the West Bank. So it's hard to find a unifying third way, but that's for the Palestinian people to decide. Mahir Baloch is saying that he doesn't know, and that's fine. If you want to get involved on this conversation, we can take phone calls. We've got the audio, and I'll put the number on the screen. It's 07491 751 203. Alternatively, you could just click the link, and if we trust you, we'll let you in. But what do you think will be the next step for Trump, given that this has happened so late in his, well, maybe late in his tenure? We don't know yet. He might well win in the courts. You were saying last week that you thought he might launch a war just so he could cling on to power. Is this a window of opportunity? Is this Tel Aviv trying to get something done before we have this new start? And when you've got Joe Biden at the helm, it's going to be like the first day of term and no one really knows what the new teacher's like. You think this is things getting done at the last minute in this window of opportunity?
Well, I think the people that know about, because it was the Obama administratives that did that pushed back the nuclear deal with Iran or something, and Trump decided to pull out of the deal, right? And so before they renegotiate with Biden, perhaps they're probably getting the major, calculated chess parts, maneuvers and whatnot out the way. So I think it can go one, because initially I did think, yes, he would probably take extreme measures, accelerate the war, but saying that Iran could be playing it diplomatically in a way where they're not going to accelerate the war until Joe Biden is sworn in. So that way, so it could be political. It could work either way. But this is the sense that I'm getting now. However, I still believe because Trump pulled out the agreement, Iran have said that they're going to start increasing their nuclear program and they're going to develop it even more now. Well, they've got every more reason to. But whereas I think the Obama administratives were making a deal for them to delay any works on their nuclear deals with nuclear weapons and stuff. But this obviously kind of accelerates everything. So now, for them having the actual scientists being at work and developing the weapons, they've managed to disable the Iranians in a way. If that makes sense.
And you said about revenge. I mean, how much of this can Iran put up with? I was reading the list of countless names of people killed by someone on a motorbike, someone poisoned, someone with a magnetic bomb put on their car. You know, it's real James Bond stuff. Is there something? It's all right, Mac. I'm wondering, is there something in the Iranian psyche about revenge? And you mentioned this calculated, timed revenge, and we're not going to do a knee-jerk reaction and strike straight away. We will wait the time, and it's very sort of threatening, and you don't know how genuine the threat is, but there is a sense of, well, you don't know the time and the place, and it's a little bit sort of scary. Of course, there was repercussions when General Qasem Soleimani was assassinated. There were some Western targets who were hit. Not a lot of people know this, but the Lockerbie bombing that was blamed on Libya and Basir al-Megrahi was more likely committed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, again in a revenge attack for a passenger, because it happened after the downing of a passenger jet civilian airline by the United States, with no apology, with no sense of remorse. And at the time, Iran again made the statement, you will pay for this. We don't know where, we don't know when. And there is something about an enemy that doesn't react in anger. And you know yourself, you know the teaching that it's better not to take revenge. That is the greater
understanding.
There is a difference between, and I was watching a clip about this earlier on, the difference between being aggressive and being assertive. And aggression is like the classroom teacher who's losing his brag, he's shouting, he's losing control, he's shouting, the kids are shouting, and it just escalates. Versus someone who is in control of their emotions, can make calculated responses and can say, okay, you've done this, boom, boom, that's a detention, that's a phone call home, that whatever repercussion it is, but it's a calculated repercussion. That is the more intelligent response. That is less likely to escalate the situation. But will any response from Iran, and there will be a response because of this mentality. I mean, what's the alternative? Is it an honor thing? What is the best course of action for Iran? They can't just let it slide, can they?
No, they've stated that they're not going to let it slide. Everything in due course. Apparently, it has to be calculated. Now, looking at their assassination, again, I always say give props or give credit to where it's due, without having killed any civilians or any other collateral lives, should we say, into the mix. So they only went for the target which they were after, which is, it's a well executed.
But they've targeted a scientist who is an expert in nuclear energy, no?
Energy, yeah.
Weapons, energy. Iran is in a situation where it is forced to use its own petrol for fuel. It's an oil-rich country, but it is unable to sell it at the value that it might be able to, because it's forced to use it because of the economic sanctions, which are an act of war. I'll just remind you.
Itself.
Yeah. So Iran is at war. They're a victim of war. And we welcome Omar X, who's joining in. Welcome, Omar. What do you make of all this? Iran is under attack at every corner, under economic embargo, and now this assassination. What do you do if you're Iran? What's the correct response?
Well, you mentioned exacting revenge isn't the greatest thing, but going beyond that is greater. I have to respectfully disagree with you there. Depends on the severity. There's an old English saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. But that surely depends on the severity of the first wrong. If somebody slaps me and in response I punch them, yes, that's a wrong. But my severity, I'm doing double.
Yeah, but aren't we taught eye for an eye anyway?
Well, it depends. An eye for an eye is a very biblical term. If someone is swinging, some 5-year-old is swinging a chain, and that chain flies off from the actual hand of the child and hit someone in the eye, should that person now take the eye out of the 5-year-old? So I suggest not, and I think not too. But in this case, regarding Iran, the facts are self-explanatory. Iran can do absolutely nothing. It's a hype. They don't have anything, any power really. They have some weapons here and there, but might is right. The USA
They've got
and the
Hezbollah in
other state
Lebanon.
in the Middle East. I beg your pardon?
But
They've got
Pakistan,
Hezbollah in Lebanon. Next door
Pakistan
to
being
Tel
a
Aviv.
nuclear, Pakistan is, they have nuclear power and energy there, right? And
Well,
they're not really a threat.
Pakistan is the only Muslim nation that has atomic power. So they've gone into a different level now that they can cause absolute havoc. So that's why you never see anyone attacking Pakistan. The only attack that they really had out there was Osama bin Laden. I don't know. I'm sure it'd be interesting to see what you think about that. If he was there, they took him out. 200 hitman squad went out there and did what they did. That was the only time. Apart from that, no. So it seems if you have atomic power, like out of this 54, 58 Muslim countries.
Gentlemen, we've got a call. Let's just listen to who welcome this call. I hope you'll all hear. Well, welcome back, mate. Welcome back. Hoping the gentlemen are hearing you. Go for it.
Yeah, what's the topic? What's the topic?
Okay, well, we are talking about the assassination of an Iranian scientist. I take it you've just walked in through the door.
Yeah, kind of thing, but I'm aware of that, what happened before, yeah.
Yeah, well, without saying who you think did it, we're just asking what might the response be from Iran, and what's the correct response? Is it right to take revenge when one of your top scientists is murdered in an attack like that?
Yes, it's tricky. Like, I think restraining is needed, and I think wisdom is needed, you know, in this sort of scenario.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point. Wisdom and restraint. I'm just going to give the gentleman the benefit of a quote. Hearing me as well. This is from, and I know Mac will appreciate this, Imam Hussein. The most merciful person is the one who forgives when he is able to take revenge. So there must be something in the Iranian psyche that would resonate with that, wouldn't there?
Yeah. Yes.
And we're going to get some other callers on. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
Thank you, brother. And the other quote I had from Imam Ali, the best revenge is to improve yourself. So this is quite a forgiving ideology.
And also the flower.
I mean,
the flower.
Go on, give us that one again, the flower.
Okay, so the saying that Ali said, it says be as, well, because in the linguistics of Iranian and Arabic, to call someone as disciplined and well is to call them a flower. Look at that beautiful flower, whether it be a woman or a man. So Imam Ali's,
why we say Fatima Zahra, the Fatima the flower?
The flower, yeah,
okay.
The flower, yeah. So the flower has its beauty and the natural beauty it has. So Imam Ali saying, be that flower that gives fragrance to the hand that crushes it.
Do you think, and I don't want to put you lot in a rematch, we just saw Mike Tyson and Roy Jones the other night.
So I'm
is Shia Islam a more forgiving version of the Muslim religion? Is there more emphasis on forgiveness and turn the other cheek?
I think there is from the Shia point of view, and I'll say why. Because we Shias, as I say, if we're seeing now, for example, if there was a strict, let me make it easier for your viewers. If Ali wanted us to fight our Sunni brothers, for example, he would have shown that in his actions when Omar was alive. So that's the discipline that the discipline that he's actually shown us. It's the opposite. Is he even gave his bay'ah to him after 6 months?
All right,
Mac.
All right, Mac. Omar. Forgiveness within Sunni Islam, is it as strongly emphasized as among the Shia? Or are you saying eye for an eye?
No, I respect the statements that were made by Imam Hussein and Khalifa Ali. I respect those statements, but what people need to remember is those statements were for 1500 years ago. Now, we can take some of that and use it today, but we shouldn't take it wholeheartedly the way people are taking it today. There was a woman who forgave the killer, and I heard it on your show. She forgave the killer of her son. She slapped him in Ramadan or something.
Yes,
She came to him, slapped him, and hugged him. You may recall the story. Now the guy is
that
gonna
that was in
leave.
Iran. That was in Iran, by
Yeah,
the way.
in Iran.
Probably
Yes.
probably a
he,
Shia
Now,
woman.
he
But
was gonna. Yeah, I think I
it
actually
was a
know
silly
this.
question. I don't want to play
no. Let me just quickly. No,
sectarianism.
I understand. But if
Go
I
on.
could quickly finish my point,
Yeah.
here she was most likely, as you mentioned, Shia, and these statements, even not for Shia, but for human beings, they are prevalent and they're beautiful statements. Now she forgave that man. She slapped him and hugged him. Now, who's to say that this man, who is someone who has murdered another human being, is not going to do the same thing in the next 4 or 5 or 7 years? No one. Now, Imam Hussein, they were speaking for a different. Okay, fine. If somebody accidentally pushes into me,
can I make a point? So, say
well,
if you
if
were
I can
about to be
finish mine,
executed, and the mother steps in and says, "You know what? I allow you." Would that not change your perception of life in general? Would that not make you feel different, that this is your second chance? Your life should have been taken on so and so day, but because she forgave you, that second chance, you've got to try and prove to everyone that your life is valuable, because not only she forgave you, but that's going to have a deep impact in your character, so you wouldn't repeat or be the same person that you were.
On the contrary, I would think, what a silly person. I can do this again, and now I can learn from my mistake, how I got caught, and I can move towns and even make sure I partake in a Muslim society, Shia society, because they're more forgiving. I can continue doing this. So
going back to what happened in Iran, if they do not react, will their enemies just feel they can do this again and again and again? And Bill Fence in the chat is saying, seems Iran is caught between Iraq and a hard place. Oh no, Iraq and a hard place. Sorry, thought it was geography. No guarantees. Yeah, I think it's very difficult for Iran. I understand why they use their proxies. I bang on about the fact that Iran has not been invaded by anyone. Has not invaded anyone else for 200 years, but has been invaded themselves, has got enemies at every door. If you look at the map where the US military bases are dotted around the world, they're in every country next to Iran, apart from Syria and Lebanon. I don't think there's any military bases in Lebanon. And this is what they call the Shia Crescent, where you had forces in power that were Shia. And funny enough, as much as the West did away with Saddam Hussein, there is now a Shia government in power there who would be more sympathetic towards Iran. And did Iran facilitate the invasion of Afghanistan? Possibly, yes. So it's always this tipping of the balance, using one side against the other, divide and conquer. I don't know where Iran goes from here. We won't know really what the world looks like until Joe Biden is sworn in. If he doesn't break his leg, the poor guy. What happened today? He fell over, apparently. You know me. Come on, man. So yeah, it's a difficult time. We live in uncertain times. We don't know what the relationship with these countries will be like. But I'm sure that the special relationship between Washington and Tel Aviv will continue, regardless of who is at the helm. Can I just
make a point?
Of course you can, Matt. That's what this show is all about.
If you're literally at your last moments of you're being about to be executed, and then the mother of the other person forgives you, you really tell me that's not going to have a big impact in your life and your decision making from there on? You're gonna think, like, realistically, I know what you're thinking, like, everyone's crooked, there's always corruption, but don't you think, if you do have that bad side, and if the mother does pardon you like that, don't you think that your good side would overtake your bad side? Any bad negative thoughts that you have previously would be overtaken by that decision that the mum pardoned you. That kind of would affect you in a way where, do you see what I'm saying? It would work. So
maybe.
No. Oh, wow. No, I disagree. I think these people who kill, I think we have about 80,000 murders in this country a year or so, and we have pedophilia. Who 95% of the people who are released from prison, they end up re-offending, and this is why I think Imran Khan now, who's brought in the law of castration and so on. So, but no, I have to disagree with you that not everyone will think like that. And for you to forgive a killer now, if you, Mac, are going to forgive a killer and say, hey, take him out of death row, and then that killer, even the possibility, the tiny chance that he can come now and kill someone else in the future, in 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, you can't affirm that he's not going to do that. I think it would be unfair for you to say, yes, I'm going to follow the teaching, I'm going to forgive this guy, and then in 10 or 5 years, that guy commits another crime. Imagine how that would make you feel, and then the family of the victim feel. So this is my statement, something from 1500 years ago. Yes, it's good to take in, but we might have to adapt it just a tiny bit. Yes, forgive someone. If somebody crashes into you, be forgiving. If somebody steps on your toe, be forgiving. Even if someone breaks in your house.
We just said 1500 years ago or 2000 years ago or biblical time, whenever you said, was eye for an eye. So how an eye for an eye did we get to let's forgive you? Do you see what I'm saying?
I mean,
by the way, the discrepancy between eye for an eye and turn the other cheek, I've heard it explained that eye for an eye was a limit. People were going beyond that limit. People were taking 2 eyes for an eye, and then the book said, no, you be fair, you only take 1 eye. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. In the Islamic faith, there are punishments set down that appear to resemble an eye for an eye, but I've heard it explained that this is only at state level if so and so is convicted in a court with witnesses, but on a personal level, you still go with turn the other cheek and forgive. We are not the state. We are not policemen. On an individual level, and as it says in the saying, it's better to forgive, and he that forgives when he
Allah
could take
only
revenge
forgives,
is better. Yeah, be forgiving like God is forgiving. But at a state level, you can have certain laws that are about restorative justice and sometimes retribution. Let's go with the point that. Okay, go on.
Yeah, my point is yes, I agree with the statement, be forgiving, and I respect that. But there's a limit. Some people you shouldn't forgive. Some people need to go to jail for the rest of their lives.
For sure. The regime in Iran is talking about a calculated revenge, retribution, whatever you want to call it. Here's from the Daily Mail. Assassination squad used a remote control machine gun. Always wanted one of those for Christmas to kill Iran's nuclear chief. New details emerge as Mohsen Fakhrizadeh's funeral begins and Tehran hardliners urge revenge strike on Haifa. Haifa is just off the coast near Tel Aviv, and this reminds me of the port explosion that happened in Lebanon, in Beirut, and some people felt that terrible disaster might have been a deliberate accident. I wonder why Haifa springs to mind when the hardliners in Tehran are talking about revenge attacks. And what about the collateral damage of killing innocent people when you're taking revenge? Haifa is a big city. A lot of people live there. If you attack it from afar, you're going to kill innocent people. Innocent bystanders will be cut down. Is there something else in the martyr mentality of these Iranian fanatics, some of them, that thinks, well, if they're innocent, they're going to be a martyr anyway, so it doesn't matter if we take a few innocents out while we're killing the enemy? Is there anything to be said for that argument, Mac?
Yeah, they do believe in martyrdom, and being a martyr for the beliefs. So I do see if they are going to commit in a way that they would be committing to that extreme. But again, I don't think that extreme retaliation is necessary just as yet. But a calculated one would be.
And MRX, if it happens and they strike Haifa and innocent people are killed, non-combatants, women and old men, all the people that the Quran says you must not attack in a self-defense. Is it collateral damage? What is it? Is it so what?
Well, no. I think the great thing about the former Iranian leaders, and in particular the Hezbollah leader Nasrallah, he stated
Well,
on
he's
TV.
Lebanese, but yes, certainly aligned to Iran.
He stated that we can kill, in his words, he said we can destroy cities, we can kill millions of people all over that country that they're in, and the entire towns all over, so Palestine can be at peace. He warned them and he said, look, our missiles are pointing towards your cities. We don't want to do it, but don't push us. He kept on stating this, and he even said that, fine, you may win the war, but don't think millions of your citizens will be okay, will cause hell and destruction. I'm happy that there has been nothing like this. You had the killing in England from some said Russian spies who tried to poison many people.
Novichok,
Yes, with
Novichok.
perfume. And what they didn't do, now fine, they had the target, and they I guess tried to assassinate him. They did what they could. Now they left that perfume bottle out on a bench, and when a young girl came along and saw this and realized, hey, this is an expensive perfume bottle, she used it, they said, hundreds of times in that week or so, or whatever times, all over her clothing and her body, and she died. And those people knew the damage of this, and they just didn't care, and they just left it brazenly on a park bench or something. Now I'm happy that neither side has gone in like this, but I have to say that over in Iran there are spies all over Iran, and this is what cost even the Arabs the 6-day war. There's nothing that they can really do. You said that there's an automatic gun that they had. Some said an automatic car that blew itself up and so on.
Yeah.
But how did the automatic car know where
remote
to go?
Control, what they mean. It's not automatic. It's remote. There was no passenger. There was no. Apparently, it was a remote controlled vehicle.
It sounded like they were robots in disguise.
Yeah,
this is it. Now,
okay, more than
fine,
meets the eye, if you remember the cartoon.
But a remote control car was there on the same at the same time. How, who knew that person is going to be there at that time when his bodyguards are going to be in this position? And there's just so much more that the information that they had. It was people that were there. The car didn't make itself and just end up on the street. It was brought from somewhere. It was paid from and bought from some person, and it had to be there at that time. And it had to pass the checks. I'm sure there were police officers. So something fishy is going on, and I'm not
sure. There must be a mole, because what he's saying is he's right, because the guy wasn't just rolling around by himself. He had bodyguards apparently as well. So yeah, it must.
And that explosion could have killed a lot of innocent people also.
Yeah. So he's right in saying that he had to be at the right place at the right time and everything executed. Now, I mean, looking back at the American history, when they tried to kill, was it Fidel Castro, like 600 attempts or something it took them. You see what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
But this one is not like that. This is why it was well executed. I think it took more than just a mole. It took a good surveillancing of operation. So it was a couple of months of good worth of work that was pulled off in an instant, and yeah, it was executed well. You can't take that away from it.
Mac, it's starting to sound like you were in on it. I'm not accusing you of anything, and I would just like to point out on this channel, on Lessons for Life, we denounce all terrorism. We denounce all hate speech. We denounce all injustice, and we like to be law-abiding in the countries that we live in. Gentlemen, you've really pulled it out of the bag again. I want to thank you, and we'll have your rematch one day, but it's good that you're friends. And we will be back on Wednesday night for a Weird Wednesday. We are going to be talking about aliens and all manner of
what happened to the book?
Strange stuff. The book disappeared. Now the book will be back. The book will be back. This has been Lessons for Life, and we will do it all again soon. We were here.